Welcome to Scone Baking Beyond. Hi, I'm Kathy, and I enjoy making scones, muffins, cookies, and all sorts of delicious baked goodies. Today, I'm going to show you how to make my strawberry basil scones with a balsamic reduction icing. These scones were inspired by a trip to Modena, Italy, where we took a food tour to not only see how balsamic vinegar is made, but we also had the pleasure of tasting the delicious and sweet balsamic vinegar of Modena. These soft and tender scones are filled with sweet strawberries, peppery basil, and then topped with a tart balsamic icing. They have the perfect combination of sweet and tart. So, let's bake. The first thing we want to do is slice our strawberries and soak them in 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. So what I'm going to show you is how I slice my strawberries. I use an egg slicer. So I take the strawberry, I put it on there, and I just turn it upside down and let it slice. I put the next one on, which then pushes the other one down, and I continue until all my strawberries are sliced. Isn't that the easiest way to slice strawberries? Is just use your egg slicer. And here you have all your strawberries all nice and sliced, all perfectly sliced, the same size. And now I have my strawberries right there. So we'll put that off to the side. So I have here the balsamic vinegar that we purchased in Modena. Now I don't think you can get this in the United States. It's got the DOP on the label, and I don't think we can get the DOP, which is a very good balsamic vinegar here in the United States. You can buy a balsamic reduction syrup. You can use that, or if you click on the link below, I did give you a recipe for how to make a balsamic reduction syrup. But I'm going to use the balsamic vinegar I got from Modena, and I'm going to use 1 tablespoon. And what I'm going to do is let this soak into the strawberries for about 5 minutes. I'm going to stir these up so that all the strawberries get all the wonderful balsamic vinegar soaking into them. We're going to let these soak for about 5 minutes. So while our strawberries are soaking in the balsamic vinegar, it's time to get our butter together. And what I want to do whenever I make my scones, I always grate the butter, because I want to keep this butter as cold as I can for as long as I can. And so the first thing we do is grate our butter. Okay, our butter is all grated. Get those pieces that didn't quite make it on there, get them on there. Now I've handled this butter and I'm starting to warm it up. So what I want to do to keep it cold is I want to put in the freezer for about 5 minutes. While the butter's in the freezer, it's time to drain our strawberries and balsamic vinegar. The strawberries have been sitting in the balsamic vinegar for about 5 minutes, so it's time to drain them. And we're going to keep and reserve all that wonderful balsamic vinegar and strawberry juice. We're going to set the strawberries and the reserved balsamic vinegar aside until we're ready to use them later. Now it's time to put our dry ingredients together. I have 2 cups of unbleached flour, 1/4 cup of whole wheat pastry flour, 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to mix this up until it's all combined. And now it's time to put in that frozen butter. And because this butter has been grated and it's a bit frozen, all I need to do is mix it up with the dry ingredients. I don't have to cut it in or anything. I can just mix it up and just make sure that every piece of butter is covered with the flour mixture. And that way, this butter stays cold a lot longer. Because what happens is, in your scones, is before the butter melts, it will create some steam. And that steam creates wonderful layers and pockets in your scones. So I am trying to keep this butter as cold as I can. And you see, I didn't need to cut it in or do much work with it, so it's still cold. And it's all covered up with the flour mixture. So now it's time to add 1 cup of buttermilk. And we're gonna mix this up until it's just combined. We don't wanna overmix it. We just wanna get it to where it's just combined. So now it's all combined. So let's get our spatula out of here. There we go, put that off to the side. Take my hand and I start kind of putting it together into a ball. And if you have a little bit of flour mixture left in the bottom, that's okay. So we'll just put that on there. And now we're going to leave a little bit of the scone making world and we're going to go into the croissant making world. So now we're going to roll this out into a 12-inch by 12-inch square. There we go. Let's see how we're doing. 12 inches by 12 inches. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold it into thirds one direction and then fold in thirds back over itself and then fold it in thirds the other direction. So we have this nice little wonderful square little package. So now we're going to take this dough and put it on a flour covered board here or plate. We're going to put this up in the freezer because I've handled this dough and I'm starting to warm up that butter and I want to keep that butter as cold as possible. So I'm going to put this up in the freezer for about 5 minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes, so time to get the dough out of the freezer. And we're going to roll this out into another 12-inch by 12-inch square. Okay, let's see how we're doing. We'll just square it up just a little bit here. And then we'll see how we're doing. We have 12 inches by 12 inches, just perfect. So now we're going to take those strawberries that we had soaking in the balsamic vinegar. I've drained them and now we're going to put them on our dough here. And try to sprinkle them as evenly as you can on the dough. I usually leave about a 2-inch gap at the bottom because as I roll this, the strawberries tend to kind of scoot down a little bit. So, and try to make sure the edges also get some strawberries on them. And then I've cut up 1/4 cup of basil. I went out to my garden and picked some wonderful basil. And my husband loves it when I pick this basil. So what I did was I chiffonade it and then I just gave it a rough chop after I chiffonade it. Because I found with the chiffonade it was just a little too big of pieces. And I didn't want it too small of pieces. So I'm going to just sprinkle this. Now we're going to take a little bit from the cinnamon roll world. We're going to roll this up just like you would a cinnamon roll. You want to try and roll it up tight, but this is not a yeast dough, and so this will tear if you try to roll it too tight, but you do want it snug. And you want to try and keep this 12 inches. And if it sticks, you just kind of scrape underneath it. And what I do is I roll it all the way over and just kind of pinch up my seam here just a little bit. It doesn't have to be truly pinched together. Just a little bit pinched together there, okay, and put the seam back down. So now, again, I want to keep it 12 inches long, and now I want to flatten it to 4 inches wide. And you want to keep the ends as square as you can. So now we're going to cut them into those triangle scones we're all really familiar with. So I find the middle, and I cut there, and now I'm going to cut this every 2 inches. There's 1, 2 inches. And then another 2 inches right there. Same thing, 2 inches, and then 2 inches. And now to get those wonderful triangle scones, we're going to cut these in triangle. We're going to put them on our baking sheet, which I do need to get out here. So let me move these up a little bit so I can get my baking sheet here. And take our triangles and put them on our baking sheet, and I do line the baking sheet with parchment every time I bake. now for the last one. And see, even the edge pieces are going to have wonderful strawberries and basil. There we go. I have one beaten egg, and I'm just going to put a little beaten egg. Okay, brush on the last scone with this wonderful egg wash. So now we're going to bake this in my preheated oven at 400 degrees for about 18 to 20 minutes. Okay, it's been 18 minutes. They're nice and golden brown and cooked completely. So the first thing I want to do is take these scones off this baking sheet because I don't want the bottoms to cook any more than they already have. So I'm just going to slide the scones and the parchment paper together onto my cooling rack. I'm going to let these scones sit here until they're completely cooled, and then it's time to ice them. Our scones are cooling, so now it's time to make the balsamic reduction icing. I have here 1 cup of powdered sugar that I sifted. I have 1 tablespoon of softened butter. And remember when we put the balsamic vinegar, there we go. When we put the balsamic vinegar with the strawberries and we soaked the strawberries and then we drained them, well, we reserved that balsamic vinegar. And here it is now, and I have 2 tablespoons. If you're a little bit short of the 2 tablespoons, it's okay to add a little bit more of your balsamic syrup. So I have 2 tablespoons. I'm going to add that in there. And because we soaked in the strawberries, this balsamic reduction here also has a little bit of strawberry hint flavor to it. So I'm going to very carefully whisk this together. Okay, that looks just perfect. If it's a little bit too thick, you can add a little buttermilk. If it's just a little bit too thin, you can add a little bit more powdered sugar, but I think I'm happy with that. That looks just right. So I have here a Ziploc sandwich sized baggie, and I cut about a 1/4 inch hole, there it is, in that corner. It's important to remember what corner you cut that hole in. So now we're going to put our icing, and that's what I'm going to use for a piping bag. Whenever I ice things, I just tend to just use a Ziploc baggie and use that for my icing. So here we go. And I always fold this back because sometimes I make a mess getting that icing in there. And I want all this wonderful, it has a wonderful combination of tartness from the balsamic vinegar, and it has a wonderful sweetness from the strawberries and the powdered sugar. So it's a wonderful combination of sweet and tart. So I'm going to close this up and try not to let that icing start escaping out on me here. There we go. So now I have my own little homemade piping bag. Here's my scones. They have cooled completely, so now I can start putting my icing on them. And I just do a nice little easy drizzle on top. I don't like a lot of icing on, so I just do a nice little easy drizzle. Now for the last one. There we go. Get it on there. There we go. There. There. Oh, that looks wonderful. So now it's time to try one. You can see the strawberries in there. You can see the basil in there. The balsamic icing on top. A wonderful combination, like I said, of tart and sweet. They're nice and soft. They have wonderful layers because of rolling it and also because of the butter and letting that stay really cold so it can make those wonderful pockets and layers. This is so wonderful and tender. For the complete recipe, including making a balsamic reduction, please click on the link below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe for future videos. Thank you very much for watching. Gotta have some more.